Thank you so much for coming out tonight to hear about our increasing number of coyotes in the neighborhood. I wanted to mention that we ran out of handouts. I'm going to go make copies now, and then when I come in, if you could just raise your hand, I'll make sure I get the handouts to you. It's a good problem to have, to run out of handouts. Our speaker tonight is a wildlife ecologist for the Humane Society of the United States. She specializes in helping communities resolve urban wildlife issues. She ran a public assistance wildlife hotline for 18 years, and her work with wildlife has been featured on the Ellen DeGeneres Show, the New York Times, NPR, and other national media. Please join me in welcoming Laura Simon.
Thank you so much. Can everybody hear me? Okay, great. Well, I just want to say I'm grateful to be here today to talk to you about coyotes. I know you've had a number of issues and concerns in this community, so I hope to address those concerns, and I want to present information that will be helpful to you. In terms of my own background, as a wildlife ecologist for the Humane Society of the U.S., my specialty is in helping communities resolve a variety of wildlife issues. And we do have a coyote specialist in our Washington office. She couldn't be here tonight, but you get me. But what I try to do is help you come up with good, workable solutions. And as a graduate of the Yale School of Forestry and putting in about 20 years of working a wildlife hotline where we help communities day and night, 7 days a week, try and come up with good solutions to wildlife problems. I'm going to hope to help you come up with a viable solution here and help you understand coyotes better so that you can see, where they fit into this community, what the issues are, and how you can work to resolve those issues. So, people have many views of the coyote. There are cartoon images that many of us are familiar with, and even Mark Twain was intimately involved with the coyote. He described the coyote as a long, slim, sick, and sorry-looking skeleton that is a living, breathing allegory of want. He is always hungry. But there are a lot of interactions between people and coyotes, not just here, but around the country. The reason is there's been a great expansion. Coyotes once lived in a very small portion of our country, and their numbers have expanded because the opportunity is great. They're very adaptable and are increasing urban and suburbanizing of our country has been really good for them because they can thrive in our urbanized landscape. So today, they pretty much live in every state, every community in this country. And that has resulted, not surprisingly, in increased interactions between people and coyotes. But many people are seeing them for the first time, and understandably, they're scared. They don't know what they're dealing with. This is an example of how adaptable the coyote is. This is a coyote who has learned to use the train system in Portland, Oregon to get from place to place. And the coyote happily takes his seat and goes from one area to another. Doesn't bother anybody, and nobody seems to bother him. But this gives you an indication of how smart they are and how adaptable they are. But people have a lot of fear and concerns about them. And these are some examples. There have been 911 calls, a lot of press on coyote issues, and often when a cat disappears, people tend to assume it's the coyote that got the cat, and that may or may not be valid. But when a coyote is known to be in the area, people tend to assume that any cat or dog that disappears is because of that coyote, and it's not quite a fair accusation because often cars or other things have taken the pet. Here's a case study in Bethany, where I live. A couple of years ago, a coyote apparently was along a roadway where a jogger was. And the jogger said the coyote saw them and came out and bit them, and the poor jogger just went right off the roadway, collapsed, and was taken to the hospital after this coyote attack. But the interesting thing was the police report and the hospital report did not jive with a coyote attack. They said that the person's injuries really were not typical of any sort of bite. Actually, what they found were pricker bush wounds. And it turns out that what really happened here was the person was jogging, they saw a coyote, it scared them, the person ran off the road, fell into a pricker bush, assumed that it was a coyote attacking them, and went to the hospital. But there was no coyote involvement whatsoever. So it was what we call a pricker bush. But, you know, this is, again, people's fears can often influence how they perceive a given event. And it was interesting because the press that night reported this awful coyote attack on a jogger, and we called the news station and we said it wasn't a coyote attack at all, actually, but they would not reverse their story. It had gotten a lot of good press, and this story ran for 2 days and we could not stop it, but it was not a verified coyote attack, it was a pricker bush attack. So what I'm going to try and cover today, and please know I'm not making light of the perceived risk and threat that coyotes may pose in this community and concerns that you might have, but I just want to point out to you that often a person's perception may be influenced by a number of things. So we need to really verify, where are coyotes a problem? Are they really a problem? And what are they really doing that is a safety concern? So I'm going to talk about coyotes, myth or fact. We're going to go through a couple of those. Then we're going to talk about why are there coyotes in Stamford, how to solve conflicts, how do you protect pets, what do you do if you encounter a coyote, how to haze coyotes, and then I want to entertain any of your questions. Starting with a myth or a fact, are coyotes the third fastest mammal in North America? What do you guys think? Yes or no?
No.
Yes.
No, yes. How many yeses? Raise hands. How many no's? Raise hands. A lot of no's, okay? Well, it is a fact. Coyotes are the third fastest mammal in North America. They can run up to 43 miles per hour. They have long legs which are adapted for running. Their first response really is to run away when they're faced with any kind of threat. Okay, now I'm going to jump to another one. I'm just testing your knowledge here because it's fun for me. Myth or fact, coyotes are carnivores. How many say yes, they're carnivores? Raise your hand high. Okay. How many say no, they're not carnivores? Raise your hand high. Okay, the carnivores have it. You're wrong. Coyotes are actually omnivores. You would not believe what these creatures eat. They eat so many different things. They eat berries, they eat insects, they're very opportunistic. This is a study done in Cook County, Chicago, Illinois, where they looked at the typical diet of urban, suburban coyotes. And what they found was that small rodents comprised the bulk of their diet, 42%, white-tailed deer fawns, 22%, fruit was a quarter of their diet, which is surprising to most people. Rabbits, birds, etc. If you go to the bottom of the list, you see that human-associated food was only 2% of their diet, and domestic cats was only 1% of the diet. This study was done looking at their scats. Their scats were analyzed throughout Chicago, and they were able to determine what these coyotes were eating. So the bottom line message to you, which is something that is similar in other urban areas where they've looked at what coyotes are eating, is that even if coyotes are in suburban and urban areas, they're making an honest living. They're preying primarily on small rodents and fruit. They are not going after small pets and human-associated foods such as trash. Okay, here's another one. Do coyotes hunt in packs? How many say yes, they hunt in packs? Come on, raise those hands. Okay, how many say no, they don't hunt in packs? Kind of equal here. All right, well, the answer is no, not in Connecticut. They tend to hunt alone or in loose pairs. We don't have pack hunting like you would imagine for wolves. There are two types of coyotes, and I'm going to talk about them more in a little bit. There are resident coyotes, which live in family groups, which we can call a pack. And then there are transient coyotes, which are solitary coyotes moving from place to place. They operate singly, alone. All right, here we're going to jump to one more. Do coyotes howl to celebrate a kill? How many say yes? Hands up. Do they howl to celebrate when they've killed something? Nobody? One person? Nobody? This is my trick question. Please put your hands up. Okay, you're right. You're right, it's a myth. They produce a variety of sounds. They howl, they bark, they whine, they do all kinds of bizarre sounds. They howl to communicate with family members. They howl to defend their territory. They howl if they're happy, they howl if they're sad. They howl when they hear a siren or an ambulance, just like your dog. We don't know all the reasons they howl, but there are many. But there is no scientific evidence to suggest that they howl to celebrate that they've killed an animal. So there's pretty much a complex set of communications that coyotes do. But if you hear them in your community, it doesn't mean they've just killed something. Okay, now I'm going to jump to coyote ecology and behavior. How do you recognize a coyote? Well, they're about 25 to 35 pounds, which is a lot smaller than most people think they are. People tend to think they're 50 to 80 pounds. They have pointed ears, yellow eyes, which is a key indicator, a very slender muzzle, and they have this black tipped tail, which is usually held downward. Unlike the red fox, which people tend to confuse with coyotes, red foxes have a white tipped tail. People often confuse coyotes with domestic dogs, particularly German shepherds. You can see a coyote out there, you can see a German shepherd. If you look on the right-hand side of this picture, if that animal wasn't wearing a collar, many people would mistake it for a coyote. So how do you recognize a coyote? Excuse me, this is kind of a rude shot, but they have, I'm a biologist, so I have to show you these things. Coyote scat is often filled with hair and bones. Dog scat is usually soft food, and so you don't find hair or bones. Coyote tracks are very similar to dog tracks. A difference is you see the paw marks, but they're often just for the middle toes only. But they can look very similar to dog tracks. There are two types of coyotes. There are resident coyotes, which will live in family groups, and those family groups can consist of 3 to 8 individuals. And then there's the transient coyotes, the solitary coyotes that are just operating alone. The resident groups, they live in a group of 5 to 6 adults. They have the pups from that year. They tend to defend their territories from other coyotes, which means they're going to hold down that territory. They're not going to let other type coyotes come in. They usually have smaller home ranges, particularly in urban and suburban areas, whereas the transient coyotes have huge home ranges. They're just moving. They don't quite know where they're going. And they're looking to establish a territory, and often they're young coyotes and they just don't know where to be, so they keep moving. I do want to mention that the transient coyotes can comprise about 30 to 50% of the coyotes that you see out in the environment. This is a chart. This is the Cook County in Chicago, Illinois has done a long-standing 20-year study of coyotes in urban, suburban areas, and they looked at the home ranges of coyotes. They tracked them and radio collared them, and what they found, if you look at the white polygons, those are the transient coyotes that are on the move, and you see they have a large home range, whereas those small yellow orangish polygons are the resident coyotes that live there, that are staying in one place. They have a much smaller home range. If you look carefully, you see that all the coyotes tend to focus their activities around green space, around public open space areas rather than areas that people are living in. Not entirely, but they choose to be in the areas that are less populated by people. In terms of mating season, here's how it works with coyotes. December to March is the mating season. They're monogamous. They tend to stay with one mate pretty much for their entire lives. Both the male and the female raise the young. Many mammals, it's only the female that will raise the young, but with coyotes and foxes, it's both parents do the parenting. Interestingly, they adjust their litter size based on food availability and how dense the population is. So when there's a lot of coyotes, they have smaller litters. When there are fewer coyotes, they have larger litters. Conflicts at this time, if people have off-leash large dogs, what happens, coyotes may see a dog as a threat to their mate, so they might come up to a large dog who's off-leash, they might investigate. This is a time where larger dogs may be more at risk of coyotes having an altercation with them. During the pup rearing season, which is April to August, you find the pups. Their litters can be as large as 10 pups, but pretty much they're between the 4 to 7 pup range. They stay in and around the den for about 6 weeks. This is a time where people call us, and I used to run a wildlife hotline for 20 years, and people would call and they'd say, we have orphaned coyotes. I'd say, what do you mean they're orphaned? Well, they're running around, there are no parents, they're playing like mad. And what I would explain to them is that this is a 2 to 3 week period where the pups are left behind. The parents are out hunting, but the pups are too young to join them. So the pups are left at the den site, they're bored to tears, and they're just playing like mad. There's no parental supervision, and that's totally normal. As soon as the pups are old enough to go on hunting outings with parents, they will disappear. You won't see them. So every summer we coach people on just waiting it out. If the pups are active, that's a good sign. They're just waiting to be old enough to go on hunting outings. They stay in and around the den for about 6 weeks. This is the only time that coyotes have a den. People tend to assume, oh, we found a den. Like I think recently we heard there was a den found. But coyotes only use a den when they're raising pups. They are not using a den now. They will just hang out in certain areas, sleep under trees. They only use dens when they have helpless young. The female coyote will have multiple denning sites, and if her pups are threatened or if there's any sort of disturbance, she'll move her pups to a different den site. By the end of summer, pups are on their own. So right now, the pups are on their own. They're establishing their own territories. They're not using dens. Any conflicts at this time may be small dogs. Sometimes are seen as small prey. And, you know, for a coyote, if you think about it, they see a squirrel, they see a rabbit, they see a little bichon. To them, these are all possible prey items. They're small. They don't realize one of those animals is of utmost value to you. They just see them all as easy prey. There's a lot of activity at the den, April till August, and that's primarily because the pups aren't old enough to be leaving it. Sometimes when you're walking your dog around a den, what will happen during this time period is adult coyotes may follow you and your dog. They're kind of checking out to see if your dog is a threat to them or a threat to their den. So they may follow you and try and figure it out. It's not that they're trying to attack you. It's not that they're going to go after your dog. They're just assessing any sort of threat at this time to their own pups. And then, of course, September to December, which is now the yearling coyotes are leaving the family group. They're becoming transient. They have to establish their own territory, so they're on the move. There are less conflicts now, usually, But when people have outdoor pet food or they have garbage, that can be enticing to these young coyotes, particularly inexperienced coyotes who are not that good at hunting, and they're going to take advantage of a free food source. Okay, so coyotes, where do they live? This is, I don't know if you guys heard about this in Chicago. There was a huge press thing. A coyote on a very hot summer day just walked into a deli and jumped into the cooler where the Snapples were contained and just lay down. And people were totally freaked out. Why is this coyote there? And he was just, it was a really hot summer day. It was like 100 degrees. And people couldn't figure it out, like, where did this animal come from? Why is he here? He shouldn't be here. But the reality is, coyotes live in all landscape types. I mean, this animal found a nice, cool place to be on a hot summer day. They do live often in close proximity to people, but people rarely see them. Sometimes they're living in high numbers in heavily urbanized landscapes. And they do show a preference to living in their natural habitats, but when we've developed so much of that natural habitat and they're so adaptable, they will take advantage of what we have to offer. They do usually try to avoid people, but not always. But in this case, animal control and the police came out and just gently moved the coyote out of the cooler and moved him on his way. He was a totally healthy coyote. He was just really hot. And he didn't, endanger anybody. In terms of mortality and disease, most coyotes die before they reach the age of 3 years old. They can live up to 15 years in captivity, but not in the wild. Automobiles are their biggest killer. Rabies is relatively rare. We do have some coyotes that succumb to rabies. Mange is a huge source of death. Mange is a terrible thing. These mites burrow under the skin of coyotes and cause loss and incredible itching and really compromise them to the point of death. And we do have some in the field treatment protocols. And horseformer has been very effective at reversing this, but it's a terrible way to go. But you will see and hear about coyotes that are succumbing to mange. Okay, why are there so many coyotes in Stamford? There's a lot of good habitat and space here, a lot of food. Mice and rats are a key attractant to coyotes. What we always tell people is free rodent control that coyotes provide. There are a lot of small mammals. They will go after squirrels and rabbits. There have been studies done which show that they tend to prey on Canada goose eggs. And I know it's interesting, a number of communities will complain to us about too many Canada geese, but coyotes are performing a service here by going after their eggs. They will go after some fawns and contribute to some fawn mortality, but they do help to balance the ecosystem. They are a key predator and an important one, particularly in urban, suburban areas. They don't have much competition. They're a top predator, but they are here and performing these services. Also, there's a lot of attractants we provide in our communities. We may or may not mean to provide these attractants, but they're pet food we leave outside, particularly for cats, unsecured garbage cans, messy bird feeders. I always suggest to people that they put not sunflower seeds, the whole seed, but just the sunflower hearts in your bird feeder because there's less spillage, less mess. Coyotes will go after some vegetable gardens, compost piles, if there's small pets. But the biggest problem we have is intentional feeding. People will feed coyotes. They think it's fun, they think it's cute, they'll put out food, and then they discover that coyotes are a problem and they stop, but they've created bad behaviors. For example, in Brantford, this was a couple of years ago, we had a situation where a coyote came up at a McDonald's and bit a woman on the knee, and it was a terrible thing, and people said, why did the coyote do this? Is he rabid? Well, it turned out that the poor coyote had been fed by employees at the restaurant for a long time. They were giving him handouts. So he approached this woman wanting food. When she didn't give it, he just gave her a nip. This was bad behavior created by people's behavior. It wasn't the Coyotes' fault. It was our fault for creating this kind of behavior. But it took a while to pull this out. I remember when the original media reports came out, there was like, complete mystery. Why did this coyote do it? Was it rabid? And then when they interviewed the personnel at the McDonald's, they found that this coyote had been fed for a long time by the employees. Okay, coyote sightings. I know you've had a number in this community. What does it mean? They're naturally diurnal. People tend to think coyotes should be nighttime animals. No, they are diurnal because they are active when their prey is active. Squirrels and chipmunks and mice are active by day. That's when coyotes are meant to be active. They try to avoid people. They're not looking for people. We're way too big a prey item for them. In many areas, they are living. People never see them because they're not visible. When they're seen hunting by day, it's not a cause for concern because that is when they should be hunting. People sometimes think they're rabid if they're seen by day. No, this is when their prey base is active. This is when coyotes should be hunting. The problem is habituation. They become habituated to people when they learn that people or neighborhoods are a source of food. For example, when people leave pet food outside, when they leave camping food scraps, unsecured trash, compost piles, fruit trees, bird feeders, when there's food out there for them, they don't know they're not supposed to come for it, so they become attracted to our backyards because they're a source of food. So habituation is really a learned behavior, and we reinforce this when we see a coyote and don't react properly. For example, if many of us see a coyote comes to the backyard, our first instinct is to what? Get a camera, take a picture. Oh my God, there's a coyote. So that doesn't help because we're teaching coyotes it's okay to be there. So in terms of preventing conflicts, I'm going to run through a number of things for you in terms of how to prevent conflicts in this community. Will coyotes attack pets? They usually hunt small rodents. So, unattended pets, such as small dogs and cats, they're at risk of an attack because the coyote doesn't know the difference. They don't know they're not supposed to attack your small pets. Your small pets are similar to their normal prey. Larger breed dogs are at high risk during the breeding season primarily because that's when coyotes are guarding their dens, and if there's an unleashed dog running around in that area, they may go after it. But that's pretty much the only time that they'll go after a larger breed dog. But proper pet care is vital. We always tell people, attend your pets when they're outdoors. Use leashes when you're walking your pets. Keep them inside at night, don't leave them out. Don't allow a coyote to come between you and a pet, and don't allow your dogs to play with coyotes. And this sounds silly, but we have a number of cases where people have had dogs and they've seen coyotes, and the coyotes and the dogs play, and then they get angry when the coyotes grow up, particularly the pups, and seem to come after the dogs. You should not be allowing dogs to play with coyotes. In terms of protecting dogs, small dogs, it's important to supervise them when they're outdoors. Use a leash. If you see a coyote, pick up the dog. With large dogs, you need to be extra vigilant January to March, the breeding season. Always use a leash, and again, don't allow a dog to play with a coyote. In terms of cats, the only way to ensure cat safety really is to keep them indoors, not just to protect them from coyotes, but to protect them from cars, dogs, and a whole host of other things that will harm cats. We always tell people if you're going to let your cat go outside, use a leash, buy a cat enclosure. It's not just important for protecting them, but as the president of the Connecticut Wildlife Rehabilitators Association, we have over 500 calls every year about cats attacking baby birds, baby squirrels, baby chipmunks, and maybe a lot of different kinds of songbirds. And really, it's not the cat's fault. They have this natural predatory instinct, but they're not a native predator, and they do a lot of harm. So it's really important to protect native wildlife from cats. So building a cat enclosure, there's many options. There are these kinds of outdoor runs. There are these catios, which allow cats to enjoy the great outdoors, but not harm wildlife. But really, the only way to ensure their safety is to keep them indoors. It's also important to pick up any cat food you might put outside immediately after you feed them. Keep them inside at night. And some people have created these cat posts, these sort of shelters, which cats can jump onto, but predators can't, which give them some protection. Never leave them unattended. In terms of fencing, to keep a coyote out, you need a fence that is at least 6 feet tall. You don't want a space underneath, they will dig. So you need to sort of create an apron where you run the mesh down and then you run it along the ground for about 2 feet and secure it with landscaping staples. It's important to remove any sort of brush near people's homes and remove attractants and do all these different things. You basically want to keep the food enticements away from coyotes. If there's food enticements, they're going to come to it. So you want to avoid attracting them by limiting what they might be attracted to. For example, here's a home. Imagine, a person here has a fence, but they let their dog out at 6 in the morning and then go get a cup of coffee. And suddenly the dog is attacked by a coyote. And they're upset because they have a fence. What's going on? They think the coyote came out of the blue to attack their pet. But what really was happening is this brush and cover allowed the coyote to live there and to observe these people. And this coyote knew that this dog was let out at 6 in the morning every morning. And this was a problem that was in the works for a long time. So the attack was not a sudden thing. This coyote had cover and could sort of plan this attack. Whereas here's a similar circumstance with a low fence, but the brush is removed. So the coyote would be exposed, he wouldn't be as comfortable, and wouldn't plan to come out and go after the dog. So it's really a matter of looking at your own environment and thinking, if you don't want coyotes around, what can you do to reduce the attractants? Can you get rid of the cover? Can you create a more open space that they would not be so comfortable in? This is a kind of fence. A 6-foot-high fence is important. Some people have put this kind of mesh barrier on top. It folds to the outsides. A coyote cannot scramble over it. Coyotes are scramblers. They don't jump fences. They scramble over them, and this would deter them. It doesn't look beautiful. This is a better option. The Coyote roller is a commercial product. It's essentially a PVC pipe that's put on top of a fence, and what happens, the coyote tries to scramble over the fence and the PVC pipe rolls them off. You don't have to go with the Coyote roller. You can sort of affix something similar to this, something more homemade, but the idea is what the coyote tries to get over it can't, and it's also good for keeping dogs inside enclosures, and they give up. Do coyotes attack people? Attacks on people are really rare. There's an average of 10 bites a year in this country. Compared to, there are over 4.7 million dog bites reported in the US every year. Now, not to make light of the coyote bites, but I just want to put it in context that there's a lot more risk from dog bites than coyote bites. Most of the coyote bites involved a minor injury, and most of them are related to some sort of feeding, intentional or otherwise, or some sort of pet-related incidents. Essentially, you're more likely to be killed by a champagne cork or a golf ball than attacked by a coyote. And Coyotes really, people get scared of them and they exaggerate the risk, but we're just not seeing a big public safety risk from coyotes in this country. In terms of children, you really want to teach children how to stay safe. Obviously, you don't want to leave small children outside unattended for a number of reasons. If there's a coyote nearby, pick up the child, teach them safety around strange dogs or animals. And what we've devised is a smart sort of instructional protocol. Basically, you want to stop if you're a child. Don't make any sudden moves. Make yourself look big. Announce yourself. Make noise. Retreat. Back away slowly. Never run. The problem is children and adults, when they see something scary, whether it's a coyote or a bear, they run. And that will elicit a prey response in the animal, whether it's a coyote or a bear. They see this running animal and they tend to give chase because that's their instinct. So you want to teach children, do not run. Back away slowly and tell an adult. In terms of resolving coyote conflicts, we want to change the coyote's behavior, and we also need to change our own behavior. It's sort of a twofold solution. Pretty straightforward. We want to eliminate what's attracting coyotes. Really look at your properties, look at your backyards. What are the food attractants that might be bringing a coyote in? We want to take precautions with pets and teach children to recognize coyotes, never feed animals they don't know, and to contact an adult when they see a coyote, but most importantly, don't run from one. This is the traditional approach to remove coyotes, is to trap them, relocate them. The modern approach is neither. It's to haze coyotes, because we found that removal and relocation simply don't work. Why doesn't it work? In Cook County, which is Chicago, Illinois, there is a coyote project which has been going on for several decades, where it's probably the most intense and highly studied scientific project that on coyotes, urban coyotes, that's been conducted in the entire United States. For example, they looked at 12 relocated nuisance coyotes. They found that none remained at the release site. They were all gone right away. They all traveled towards their original home range, and none of them returned successfully. They were killed for a number of reasons. Killing just doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. You tend to think, okay, coyote's a problem, let's kill it, get it out of the picture, but it's counterintuitive. But killing doesn't work because what you have is a stable pack. You have the alpha male and female who breed, and the other coyotes in the family pack do not breed. What happens when you pluck out a member of that pack, say an alpha male or female, what happens is you destabilize the pack. That female now has no mate. Other males from the surrounding area come in, they mate with inferior members of that pack, and the end result is that the pack is disrupted. Now you have these outsiders coming in and mating, you have the pack is broken up, and the outcome is you have more young born because you have these sub-alpha members of the community now mating, breeding, and creating young. So suddenly you have a lot more young born than you would have had if the alpha male and female were left alone. So with lethal removal, the problem is you pluck out animals, the habitat is still good, you have the transient coyotes. And remember, transient coyotes comprise about 30 to 50% of the coyotes out there. So they will move right in and take advantage of any breeding opportunity. Coyote litter size is density dependent. When there's a high density of coyotes, you have less young born. When there's less coyotes, they will have more young. And there are a number of scientific studies which show when you knock back a coyote population, they will have huge litters and immediately bounce back to even higher levels. So the end result is you knock back a coyote population and you see this huge bounce back in numbers after any sort of lethal removal, which means you resort to an endless cycle of killing, but the coyote numbers keep bouncing back, so you don't make any headway. For example, here's a study in Colorado, a 7-year study done by the USDA. They colored and tracked 92 coyotes. They set up a removal area and a control area where coyotes were not bothered with at all to compare what would happen when you remove coyotes from a population to what would happen if you just leave them alone. They reduced the population up to 75%, and what they found was that in 8 months, coyote numbers bounced back immediately to their pre-removal numbers. And how that occurred is their litter size doubled. The sex ratio favored females, and females, of course, are the animals that have young, and the yearlings reproduced. Normally, yearlings do not reproduce in coyote populations. They don't reproduce till they're 2 years old. But where they were highly trapped, you found 1-year-old coyotes reproducing. So their numbers just jump right back. More problems when you try and kill coyotes to solve problems. It's hard to catch the problem coyotes. You may have a problem, a coyote grabs a dog, but how do you find that coyote and pluck him out? Or do you just set traps and try and capture any coyote that comes along? The big problem there is you may have a lot of coyotes in the community who are not posing a problem. You pluck them out, more coyotes move in, and those coyotes then start posing a problem. Also, when you trap as a solution, you're not addressing the root cause of the conflict. You're not eliminating what's attracting coyotes, and you're leading to a situation where there are more habituated coyotes, so the problem recurs, plus you're not teaching the local residents how to coexist. And if they're not being taught how to coexist, the problem is going to continue. Also, you're not teaching coyotes acceptable behavior. Coyotes are smart, and if you teach them what is unacceptable, it's interesting because they communicate that to their pups. They communicate that to the pack. So you want to create a system where you're teaching coyotes, this is not a place you should be, get out of here. If you just trap, you're not teaching them anything. And that's a big problem with trapping, is you're not educating the coyote community at large, which I'm going to jump now to coyote hazing, which is, this is a method that actually does teach the resident coyotes where to be and how to behave. And what it does, I don't know how many of you have heard of hazing techniques, but it employs deterrence to basically move an animal out of an area they're not wanted and discourages bad behaviors. So coyote hazing is a tool that all of you can use to teach coyotes here in Stamford where they are welcome and where they're not, and to try and change their behaviors. This is a video, and it's a video done by the Colorado Parks and Recreation Department. It's to teach how to haze a coyote. It's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but I think you'll enjoy it, and hopefully, let me see if I can show it.
There's our tech person. We're trying to show this video.
Sure.
Should we try this?
Coyotes are all around us.
Not just in the wild, but also
And even if you've never seen one, you should still know what to do just in case you come across one.
don't know what to do. Welcome to our coyote. Not just in the wild, but also in cities and suburbs.
And even if you've never seen one, you should still know what to do just in case you come across one.
Don't know what to do? Welcome to our instructional video on how to haze a coyote. In this video, we're going to show you how to haze a coyote. Let's talk about what hazing is first.
Can anybody hear that?
Hazing is a simple thing you can do to yourself approached by a coyote or a person that doesn't belong. Hazing keeps your community safe and protects you and the animal from harm. Everybody wins.
When we think of coyotes, we tend to think of this, or even this. But coyotes are actually a bit more like this, and they're coming into contact with people in urban areas more and more, so it's important we know more about them.
Here are some coyote facts to consider. No matter how big you think a coyote looks, most coyotes actually weigh less than 45 pounds. They're mostly skin and fur and legs, and really very little actual coyote. What do coyotes eat? Human beings are rarely on a coyote's shopping list. They mostly like to eat fruits, insects, snakes, squirrels, mice, goose eggs, and other things that actually make them helpful to our ecosystem.
For the most part, coyotes avoid people. We're loud, stinky, and kind of scared. And in places where coyotes come into contact with humans all the time, they can get used to us and no longer see us as something to avoid.
And this is especially true for urban coyotes. Luckily, coyotes are generally trainable. This is where you come in. Like it or not, you help train your local coyotes by how you interact with them every time you see them. So, what is hazing? I know what hazing is. We did it in my fraternity. All we need are some wigs, some lipstick, and a few goats.
No, not that kind of hazing.
Hello, I am the dog whisperer, Caesar Milan. We teach hazing to all of my clients at the dog psychology center I have in Avignon, California.
Not quite. See, hazing is probably something you already know how to do. You probably use hazing techniques to keep your pet off the furniture or out of certain areas of your house.
Buster, what are you doing in that chair? Get off of there. Thank you. So what happens if you run into a coyote? Who does the hazing? A ranger? Well, that would be nice, but if you're in an urban area like a supermarket parking lot, probably aren't going to be a whole lot of rangers around to help you. How about this person? Surely she can help.
All right, sweetie. Well, I just finished folding your underwear, and I packed you a PB&J with the crust cut off. Would you like me to go out and haze that coyote for you before you go?
Sorry, but Mom is not going to be able to help you either. How about a firefighter, or a policeman, or a superhero, or an astronaut? You get the idea by now. No one is going to haze a coyote for you. If you encounter a coyote, you're going to need to handle it yourself. But here's the good news. It's not that difficult. So, what does hazing look like? In order to understand what hazing is, let's first see some examples of what hazing is not. No, that's not hazing. Well, that's scary, No, that's not hazing either. In fact, that's just stupid. Go away, Coyote! Go away! A talking shrub isn't hazing either. So running, hiding, or even trying to be friendly to the animal, these are all things that you should not do.
So what does coyote hazing look like? Well, remember the acronym SMART. Stop, make, announce, repeat, and teach. Stop. Make yourself look big. Hey! Announce yourself. Hey, hey, hey! Repeat if necessary. And teach someone else in your community about coyote hazing.
If you have a pet with you, bring it closer to you, or if possible, into your arms. Next, what should I say when I haze? Remember, when it comes to hazing a coyote, it's not what you say, but how you say it.
You
Yes, that's fine, that will work. It might be a little R-rated, but it will get results, which is ultimately what you want.
Go on now. Shoot.
Once again, it's not what you say, but how you say it. Give it a little gusto.
Go on. Get out of here. Go.
That's more like it. Sure, whatever you say doesn't matter, so it can even be gibberish. The only thing that matters is that it's a human voice, it's forceful, and directed at the coyote. Many people ask, can I use objects when I'm hazing a coyote? Sure, there's a lot of things you can use to make yourself look larger or make more noise, such as a rake, a golf club, pennies in a can, an air horn, a stick, even a water gun would work. The things you don't want to use are things like food, a lemon meringue pie, steak, anything that might coax the coyote near you.
Just remember, the goal with hazing the coyote is not to harm it, but rather to teach it to avoid people and specific places.
Next, when should I haze? Hazing a coyote should take place anytime a coyote engages you, approaches you, or you see one where it doesn't belong, such as a backyard, a playground, or just strolling down the sidewalk in the middle of the day. So, what's your excuse for not hazing? Many people don't feel comfortable with the idea of hazing a coyote. Here are some common excuses and reasons why you shouldn't make them. Well, I don't want to look like an idiot. Do you really want coyotes hanging around your house or your neighborhood? If not, you might want to be willing to look a little silly. Besides, it's only going to be for a few seconds.
What if it gets mad and comes after me?
Don't worry, it's only a 30-pound canine. You're probably going to be able to scare it off just fine. I don't know what to do. That's why we made this video. This isn't something they teach you in school.
Well, I don't think it will work.
It will work. If you follow all the instructions we just gave you, you'll be fine.
The coyote is my totem animal, and so we're in a spiritual journey together, and I don't want to hurt the coyote's
Next, is there any time I shouldn't haze a coyote? This is actually a very good question. There is one exception. Never haze a coyote that is cornered, injured, or with pups. In these cases, simply make yourself look larger, maintain eye contact, and slowly back away. So now you know how to do this, and you're prepared. And you can also share this information with friends and family, so that they are also prepared.
So that's how you haze a coyote. Be smart.
Coyote safety and awareness education is funded in part by Adams County Open Space and the Scientific and Cultural Facilities District. For more information on coyote safety and awareness, please visit aurora.gov.
Okay, well, it's a humorous video. We seem to have lost the clicker, which allows me to advance the slides, but hopefully we will find it. But anyway, the video was put out by the Denver Parks and Recreation Department to try and educate the community about how to haze coyotes in areas where there are high density. Okay, so if you want to go forward, whoop. See, whoops. Yeah, I'm going there. Okay, whoops, back up, okay. So basically, coyote hazing involves using various techniques just to instill a natural fear back into the coyote. And it can include a number of simple things. Screaming and yelling, raising your hands, banging pot tops, shaking penny jars that you use like for dog training, using squirt guns, throwing things. But the good thing is coyotes are so smart that any sort of behavior that you do to teach them to stay away from certain areas, they pass on that learning to their family members and pups. Okay, in terms of best practices, you must make a connection with the coyote for hazing to work. You can't haze a coyote from a car or behind a house. There are certain communities that have tried paintballing in Los Angeles. They had animal control officers shooting paintballs at coyotes, but they did it from behind bushes. So the coyotes learned that bushes were bad, but they didn't get the message properly. So you have to make that connection. You need to put yourself between the coyote and a pet or a child in order for it to work. And you must continue, this is so important, you have to continue hazing the coyote until it has run off the property you don't want him on. If you haze a coyote and he runs 15 feet and then you go back in the house, all you're teaching the coyote is if you run away a little, you're fine. What you want to do is run him off the property you don't want him on. So you haze him, he runs a little, you keep going after him until he is totally off the property you don't want him on. There are a variety of methods, and a variety of hazers are important. You don't want to just have one person hazing the coyote because the coyote learns, when this person comes around, I gotta get out of here. So you want to have a number of people doing it in the community. You want to only use the noisemakers or the hazing devices when you have a connection with the coyote. You don't want to forewarn the coyote. For example, we've had some problems in communities where people said, well, I did the hazing, but what they did, they were about to let their dog out and they would, make a loud sound or shake a bell. And what happened is they do it every morning before they let the dog out, and essentially they were creating a dinner bell. There goes the dog. Here you go, coyote, come and get him. You don't want to forewarn the coyote. You want to do it when you see the animal and get them off the property. Usually it only takes 2 to 3 times before a coyote or a family group learns to stay away from the area. They're smart animals. If they get told several times, don't come around here, they learn it and they stay away. This is my supervisor. She was at a meeting and they had a coyote issue. The coyote showed up and she ran out in her high heels and started screaming and yelling and did hazing right then and there. It's easy to do, it's not complicated. You don't ever want to, as I said in the video, you don't want to haze a sick or injured coyote because their behavior is unpredictable. You don't want to haze a cornered coyote. You want to give them a room to escape because you're telling them to get out of here. You got to give them that opportunity. And young children need to be taught to call for an adult. They must be taught not to run. I know there was an incident with a young child here in Stamford where she was scared of a coyote that approached her and she ran. That's exactly what you don't want to do, because when you run from a coyote or you run from a bear, that triggers their prey following instinct to go after prey. So you need to teach kids, you might be scared, but don't run. And you need to teach adults, don't run. That does trigger that prey following instinct in predatory animals. Here's an example in Bible Park, Colorado. They had habituated coyotes. They were in close proximity to people. They were lounging in the park during the day. They were around people, as you can see. They were following runners. They were going after dogs. They were very comfortable being around people, way too comfortable. So what they did here was The park staff was advised to start hazing the coyotes. They went out twice a day, and they went after the coyotes with noisemakers every time they saw them. And what they found in the end, there were no more instances of dog attacks. The aggressive behavior stopped immediately. And I think there's one more. The coyotes are still present, but they avoid people. So they're still in the park. People are not aware they're there, but they've learned to stay away from people because they were properly hazed. Here's the elementary school in Colorado. And this is similar to what's been occurring here at one of your schools. Coyotes were seen along the pathways to the school. They were also seen outside the fence at recess. And the children, what happened is the children were taught, because this was an issue, it raised concerns, there were no attacks, but the parents understandably did not like hearing about coyotes so close to their children. The children were taught to recognize coyotes and not to feed them. One of the big problems when they uncovered that coyotes were seen outside the fence were two things were going on. The kids had snacks in their backpack, and they were snacking at recess on this in this area. So coyotes were attracted to the food, and then they found that children were actually giving food to the coyotes. They were hand feeding them through the fence. So they were essentially teaching the coyotes to come for food. So a program was implemented. Children were taught what coyotes look like and absolutely not to feed them. There was literature distributed to the school and the neighborhood and the parents. And the neighborhood began hazing coyotes. Whenever they saw them, they would go after them and run them out of the area. And when the food provisioning stopped and the children learned appropriate behaviors, they had no problems ever since. So again, coyotes may appear, they may come outside a school fence or looking for food. People tend to be scared. They perceive these coyotes as coming after their children. They're eyeing the children, they're going to attack the children. No. Coyotes are not interested in children. Children are way too big to be considered a prey item. They're interested in what the children have, which is food. If that food is taken away, they're no longer interested in children. So what do I do if I see a coyote? It's not abnormal for coyotes to be seen during the day. People have the mistaken perception that if you see a coyote during the day, something is wrong. They're looking for you, they're stalking you. No. Coyotes are out when their food source is out. Squirrels and rodents and rabbits are out by day, and so it makes sense for coyotes to be out by day. That's normal. They're not looking for children. They're looking for small prey to pounce on. They want something helpless and easy. They don't want to tangle with something big that might put up a fight. So again, if you see a coyote, put yourself between the coyote and your child or your pet, and haze the coyote. Scream, yell, make yourself big, run that animal off the area. And look for what is attracting coyotes. Often people get upset about coyotes, but they don't look in their own backyards for what might be attracting them. If it's your grill, if it's pet food put out, there are things that you might be doing that is bringing coyotes to your backyard. So try and eliminate what might be attracting them, even in birdseed, a source of food that they'll be coming to. Not because they want to go after you and your family, they're interested in the bird food. And also it's important to adopt a community-wide approach. If you're trying to keep coyotes out of your neighborhood, ask your neighbors to do the same thing. Try and haze them as a group, and you will teach the coyotes to stay away from the area. So in conclusion, to prevent conflicts, really we've got to change our own behavior, eliminate what's attracting them, take precautions with our pets, teach children to be smart around them. And the biggest problem we have with kids, if they see a coyote, either they feed the coyote or they run from the coyote. And both of those behaviors are inappropriate and create problems. And we want to try and teach coyotes to stay away by hazing. I think you have a problem here at the golf course. It's there's been a coyote family that's been known and seen at the golf course that has not posed a problem. If the coyotes are no longer wanted there, hazing will teach them to stay away from that area. I'm not convinced that that coyote family is a problem, and I'm not convinced that that coyote family is responsible for some of the attacks on dogs. I mean, there's some more reconnaissance that needs to be done to determine exactly what's going on. But hazing is a very important and effective tool. So we need to all work together to help to teach coyotes what's acceptable and what isn't, and to live with them. Because quite frankly, you can trap till you're blue in the face, but coyotes are here. There are several thousand in Connecticut. Even if you pluck out coyotes from Stamford, more are going to move in. You're going to create population turnover. You're not going to solve the problem. That's not a good answer. And there's a number of sources of good information. You can go to our website. We have a lot of information on solving coyote problems. You can contact me. You can contact Lindsay White, who is a coyote specialist. You can read about Cook County in Illinois, which has done decades of research on urban-suburban coyotes and has a lot of good information for you. But at this point, I'd love to take some questions.
How large is a coyote pack usually? We talk about
A pack?
family, but
Okay.
you just described a pack.
A pack here is essentially, in this area, in the west, there are larger packs. In this area, a pack consists of the parents, the kits or the pups from this year, and maybe a few other individuals from the prior year. You won't get more than 8 to 10 animals in a pack. But interestingly, they don't hunt as a pack. You're going to find these animals live together, but they will hunt individually or maybe as pairs. But you don't have the pack hunting that you associate with wolves.
But only the alpha male and female in that pack will mate.
Only the alpha male and female will breed, exactly.
How fast do coyotes run?
They can run up to, I think, 35, 40 miles per hour. They're pretty fast.
Can we make an announcement? If anyone has any, if you'll excuse me, if anyone has any questions they'd prefer to write down, me and Pat have paper and pencils if you'd prefer to do that. Or you can just verbalize it, either way.
I have a question here. As coyotes have increased and the first bobcats have appeared, remember bobcats have been here for a long time, but very secretive. So they've been here and you won't know they're here. So they've been here when you don't know it. I've noticed fewer and fewer rabbits, groundhogs, raccoons, etc. With these top predators, what can we do to protect the general biome? Well, know that coyotes do prey on rabbits and squirrels and mice and rats and chipmunks. Groundhogs, maybe. Raccoons, no. They tend to keep certain animals down, but it's easy to assume that when you see less raccoons or your cat goes out and doesn't return, it's easy to assume that a coyote got that animal. But it's almost unfair because we don't know what happened to these animals. We don't know who preyed upon them. We don't know what car hit them. But we find in many communities that people are nervous about coyotes, and so any animal that goes missing the coyote becomes blamed, and it's not quite fair. So, you'll hear in communities that, cats are disappearing like mad. Cats have always been disappearing because of cars and other ailments that get them. So we need to really define and be sure and substantiate which of these animals disappear because of coyotes and which of them are attributed to other things, because they're out free roaming and they're subject to a lot of hazards. When hazing and you need to push the coyote back more, do you stand in the same place or do you advance? That's a good question. What you do, you scream, you yell, you make yourself big. That alone, standing in place, should be enough to haze the coyote and move them off. Is the hazing visible? Is the hazing video available online? Absolutely. And I hope all of you have signed in, and we can send you a link to the hazing video so you can share it with family and friends. Did the sign-in list go around? I hope, and if not,
People
please
can sign on the way out.
Please sign in. If you haven't done it already, sign in on the way out. We'll send you a link to the video and some other materials. Yes.
Back to that part of that hazing question, so you made an example before, so you haze it and it walks away 15 feet and then it
Mhm.
stops. I think maybe what they were asking is, do you still stay in your place?
No,
or do
you move
go
towards it. You move
Okay.
towards it. If you're an adult, we don't want children doing this. If you're an adult, you move towards it, you scream, yell, shake your penny jar, whatever. You want to get that animal off the area you don't want him in. Yes.
If trapping is not an effective way to rid the coyotes, I'm questioning why that was one of the things that was stated that would be done at Sterling Farms. So is that no longer the case?
I don't know where you are with the trapping protocol. It's not going to be effective. It's something we strongly discourage. I don't know if your animal control officer wants to comment on that, or I don't know where you stand with that.
I think I'm going to have to defer to my supervisor on that.
So will Stamford and the neighborhood around Sterling Farms understand an action plan and be kept abreast of what's taking place?
We have been speaking to the public there, and we've handed out a lot of notices on what to do with the coyotes in that area. Hopefully everyone is aware that hazing is effective. We've been telling everyone that they should be hazing these coyotes in that area. So right now, that's what we're doing. We're just trying to educate everyone.
And we appreciate the efforts of animal control to try and educate the community and guide them. So I thank you for that. I think you've done a great job. People want to see the animals trapped and removed. They feel that is the way they will get peace of mind. They don't realize that trapping and removing animals tends to not get the animals that are the target animals and creates a bigger problem. So it's a matter of public education. Yes?
You indicated that the life expectancy of a coyote is only 1 to 3 years. Is it known if they're vulnerable to Lyme disease, like domestic canines, or whether they're immune? Do you know?
Lyme disease is not a big issue for coyotes, no. And usually in the wild, 3 to 5 years is the expected lifespan of many coyotes, but Lyme disease does not seem to be taking a toll on coyotes. Yes?
Well, first of all, I want to say I am a big animal lover. I'm a vegetarian. I've rescued dogs, rescued cats, chinchilla, rabbits living in my house. But, I'm at a point with these coyotes where literally in the last 2 years, I have 4 people who I know who have had their pets killed, dogs, and now a cat. And one of them was last weekend, and it was a German Shepherd attacked by coyotes, ripped to shreds. And it's just, I'm so, I hate to do anything to hurt an animal because I'm a huge animal lover. But it's not like a deer where, they have ticks and maybe you're going to get Lyme disease, or a raccoon, and maybe if you're not careful, you're going to get bitten. I mean, these things are attacking. And a friend of mine has a friend who was getting his mail and got followed by a pack of 12 coyotes, and he had to jump in his car. I mean, it's like I'm now I go running in the morning with my little rescue Chihuahua, and I'm carrying a stick, and you haven't mentioned bear spray. Should I be carrying bear spray? Why aren't we doing something more aggressive, like spraying mace and bear spray in these animals, which have changed? I mean, yes, there are nice people around, and then there's other people who have learned bad behaviors. And I feel like some of these coyotes have learned bad behaviors, and you're not changing them, just like you may not be able to change a terrorist's behavior. You know what I mean? It's like they're too far gone. Should we be carrying mace? Should we be carrying bear spray? Because I'm literally now, my life is changing. And I can't go running in the morning with my dog as I used to. And now you're telling us to build these huge pens for our cats where, when my husband was growing up on a farm, he had barn cats and they were living in a barn. I mean, we are really changing our life. And I also don't understand, because I've been hearing rumors about people who are getting tax deductions for bringing in coyotes that they've shot.
I don't know about the tax deductions, but I would say, first of all, running, you should be running. And coyotes don't need the mace. If you're yelling and you know, they don't need much to be hazed.
But if I have a small dog, one of my friends' friends was walking, not near here, but I mean, a coyote's a coyote, whether it's here or upstate Connecticut, walking with the small dog, and the coyote came and took the dog right from her when she was walking. I mean, it's like you've got to have some way to stop it. Why can't we use bear spray or mace on these?
You could use bear spray or mace. This coyote grabbed a dog here in Connecticut?
It was, no, it wasn't in Connecticut, but I mean, you know, whether it's here in Connecticut or whether it's in New Jersey or whatever, it's still.
I mean, that's a rare occurrence. Coyotes are skittish, so just doing the hazing practices that we've described and the video described is enough to get them to totally back off and teach them to stay away.
Why would you not use mace or bear spray in a coyote's eyes?
You could use it.
Instead of what you're saying of water. Why not?
You can use mace and bear spray. It's not usually called for. You don't need it. It's not usually necessary. Also, I'd be careful because, and I'm just saying this, I don't mean to minimize your experience with them and the experience of anybody here, but having run a wildlife hotline for 20 years, we have so many people who say, coyotes took my cat. And when we say, tell me the evidence, the cat disappeared and they blame the coyote. There is no evidence. So you have to be careful to really look at what are verified coyote attacks and where are coyotes just blamed because they're in the area. You know,
my neighbor saw the coyote walking off with her schnauzer in his mouth.
Yeah.
The daughter threw a log at the coyote. The coyote dropped the dog, but it was, you know, I mean, punctured and whatever. My other neighbor found her dog in the backyard, her little Maltese torn up. I mean, it's like, it's heartbreaking because I have literally in the last 2 years heard these terrible stories, and it's like 4 people for me, you know, 1 person. It's astounding, and that's why I'm here tonight, because I literally went running this morning and I didn't have the bear spray. I took a small little can of like Lysol spray I had and a stick, you know, and I'm running in fear against these things that they're going to take my dog.
No, and I understand, and I'm not trying to minimize what you're experiencing. We're trying to help people live with coyotes because they're here. You're not going to be able to eliminate them from the environment. They are here in Connecticut, and their numbers are throughout the state and throughout the Northeast, throughout the country. So we have to find a way to live with them, and trapping and killing creates this population turnover, as we described. So that's not the answer. So it really comes down to teaching people how to be defensive and how to live with them. You know, I wish I had a perfect solution for you. I don't. But I can tell you that when you teach coyotes, if you spray a coyote with any sort of, you know, mace or bear deterrent, you are teaching that coyote to stay away from the dog, stay away from people. You're giving him a lesson that he's going to learn. And that is the essence of how we're trying to teach people to live with wildlife. Same with bears. We're having more bears moving into the area. Connecticut is not going to pluck out all the bears. We are having to devise ways to teach bears to stay away from areas we don't want them and to protect the things we value. It's just a matter of learning to live a bit defensively and teaching these animals who are smart, you know, the behaviors we don't want them to do. So, you know, I don't have the perfect solution. These are some tools we're offering you. Yes?
I really appreciate these tools, and I don't know where you went. I've seen coyotes and I've called to ask what to do, and I've been told nothing like this. So I think it's important for the animal control officer and the police, if you get the calls, to give out this kind of information because it's helpful. You know,
yeah.
Well, I know in the field where they spot them saying something posted all over the place.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what, I really appreciate this. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this. My dog happened to be the dog that was in the advocate, that was taken from my backyard and was killed. And when I went to animal protection, and when I went to the police, I was told nothing like this. I was told there's nothing we can do. Coyotes are all over Stamford, they're in Springdale, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, there's Springdale School. And it wasn't until a friend of mine who happened to know someone who was able to contact animal control and say the way this woman was treated was not appropriate, that action was taken. My concern is that it happens once a year here, okay? For example, I would say, well, didn't you hear about, you know, the dog that was attacked last year? That was a year ago. I mean, I think every year, if there are sightings, they need to announce it to the community, they need to educate us, because you're protecting coyotes, and I agree with protecting wildlife, but we need to be protected too. Our animals and our children need to be protected, and we need to know every single year, reminders should be sent out, it should be on our cable 12 or whatever television channel, it should be in the newspaper, there should be a robo-blasting, calling, emails. Not everybody has Facebook. All we need is to have the education. And if we had the education, my dog would be alive today. So, you know, I'm here because I do want to learn how to coexist with wildlife. I'm not interested in hurting any animal, but to not be given the information, to not be given the knowledge, and then when I walked away was to be told how to live with a coyote after my dog had already been killed, when there had been knowledge that there's a pack living on Sterling Farms Golf Course that's totally allowed, and they're told, ignore them, they'll ignore you, and they become so comfortable that they're not ignoring people. And so I really appreciate this, but I think Stamford needed to do more, and they need to continue to do more, and we as a community will help each other, but it can't just stop this year. It has to go on and on, because we're going to be living with them for many, many years, and I don't want to see anybody in this situation, you know, two-legged or four-legged.
Thank you for sharing, and please know we are so sorry for what you experienced, which I can't imagine how traumatic and awful it was. You know, all we can do is point you to programs. Connecticut's different. You know, Arizona, California, there are a number of states that have high coyote populations. Many more coyotes living in urban, suburban areas with people, and they've devised programs to deal with them. So we're trying to grab the best of their programs and say, here, Connecticut, use these program, you know, components to help people here live with coyotes. And the hazing has been so effective. In Denver, Colorado, they have hazing programs. They go out, they teach communities how to haze, and they've lowered their incidences of coyotes attacking dogs to 0. You know, so we're saying, great, you know, this seems to work. Let's bring it here to Connecticut. So that's what I'm trying to do. You know, we can't make our landscape entirely safe for pets, but we're trying our best, you know, to bring you the best tools, because we've looked at the trapping tools, and you know, we're the Humane Society, so of course people say, well, you guys don't want trapping. Well, no, we don't, but it doesn't work anyway. Whether we like it or not, it's not an effective solution. So we want to bring you what will work. Yes?
I just want to comment on that, educating the public. Education is the key, and I'm very big on education. This is part of why we're here today, is educating the public. As far as letting the public know about coyotes, we've been on Facebook, we've been in the newspaper, we've been on TV. The first thing I did this spring was contact the Stamford Advocate, and I gave them a story for the public on what to do about animals in the springtime, about the sightings of the coyotes, about the raccoons. We get many calls, and we're constantly educating the public. It's very difficult for us to reach everyone. We get sightings on coyotes every day. We cannot call everyone every day with the sightings we get. For the most part, these coyotes are just passing by. They're not causing problems. when we do have a problem, we do get out there, we notify the public, we canvass the neighborhoods, we go to each house door to door, and we put out flyers as much as we can.
Never happened in my neighborhood.
It
And I
may
called
not have
myself.
happened on,
Never
it may
happened.
not have happened
But I
on
didn't get that
every
advice.
single
It's happening
situation.
now, but it was not
but
happening prior to this. It was
It-
not
This was a
happening.
month ago.
Just to
Right.
correct you, it has happened. It's happened many
I live
times
right
in
next
this
to
city.
Sterling Park
Every
Golf Course.
incident, no, it hasn't happened every incident. But we have been out in the community, canvassing the community as much as we can.
Annie? Yes, I'd like to make my name is Annie Hornish. I'm the Connecticut State Director for the Humane Society of the United States. And again, very sorry for your loss, as is everyone here, I'm sure. We've been reaching out to the town of Stamford, to your Director of Public Safety, and he's been receptive to listening to what we've been saying. Also, we've been in an ongoing, I'll speak for myself, but the HSU's ongoing struggle with DEEP, trying to get the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, trying to get them to employ more humane methods in response instead of the first, a lethal response. It doesn't work. We've been making that case. The problem with DEEP at times is that they're largely motivated by trapping and hunting, and they promote that as part of what they do. And it's not effective in this situation, but that's why there's a little bit of a difficulty we've been having. But the goal is to persuade DEEP to start, instead of shooting first or killing first, to employ these methods, which we believe are more effective long-term. But that's another hurdle. That's why the town of Stamford went to DEEP, who they viewed as an authority, and DEEP told them trap. And I called them immediately, but by the time we contacted Stamford, the decision was made to already begin trapping. So there are traps laid out right now. I don't know if any animals have been caught, but we do disagree with this method, and we don't believe it's going to be effective.
Yes.
So I have 3 kids, 6 and under, and I just wanted to nail down is over the course of the next year or 2, you're going to be out sometime, but in cells, I'm sure. So you yell for help. You tell a child to yell for help. If no one happens to hear it for whatever reason, what is the optimum response then? They don't run, they stand still, do they try to make themselves bigger even though they're a foot and a half tall? Or
They make themselves big and slowly back off. Because we're not saying
yell
coyotes,
also?
they yell, they scream, they make noise, and they back
And
off.
slowly
We're
back
not seeing coyotes tackling children who are screaming, yelling, and slowly backing off. We're not seeing coyotes tackling children, but that will tell the coyote this is something scary and go away.
And they tend to be out more in fall and winter, is that right?
They're out pretty much all the time. They're diurnal. They're out in the daytime. People may see them more fall and winter, but they're out by day, summer as well.
Okay, in terms of the hazing, I mean, in some respects, it's just kind of moving them from one spot to another. Is there any sort of bigger picture thought of pushing them en masse slowly to more secluded areas?
Well, that's what you're seeing in the Colorado parks. What they found, when coyotes are hazed, they retreat to the more green spaces. They're scared of people. You're teaching them to stay away from people, and they go to the areas that are more remote and away from human activity. So you're getting them to be more secretive and more fearful of people. You're reinstilling that natural fear of people in them. And the Colorado parks, people were complaining. They thought the coyotes had been trapped. And they said, where have the coyotes gone? Well, what happened, the coyotes were hazed by the park staff and they became more secretive. They hadn't gone anywhere, but they just changed their behaviors so people weren't seeing them anymore. And people thought they had been trapped out, but they were still there. They were just more secretive. Same with Chicago. They estimate there are at least 3,000 coyotes in metropolitan Chicago. People don't know they're there. Many people have never seen a coyote. And when that Quiznos case occurred where the coyote appeared in the cooler, people were like, where did this animal come from? He was one of several thousand that were right there resident in Chicago. But people didn't know it because they weren't seeing them. So you're just teaching these coyotes to stay away from people and human activity. And that's what we want. Yes?
I think we're all on board as far as education is concerned, but it seems that a lot of us have not been contacted, even though people have said that they have made attempts. But between Channel 12 or the newspaper, it doesn't seem like it's enough. I agree with this woman here. I think robocalling is a phenomenal idea. because I think a lot of people still have landlines, and we do get political calls from different parties to remind us to vote, and we may get calls 3 times a day. I don't see a reason why, in this day and age with technology, that we can't be called. For those people that don't have robocall, everybody has a cell phone. And what do we all get on cell phones? Weather alerts. So between that, I mean, I think that's a fantastic idea. I didn't think of it. But that way, everybody will be reached because everybody has a phone. So if you keep doing that, well, no, my neighbors don't have computers, Sally, okay? But everybody has a phone. So that way, everybody will be reached. If you talk about education, I think that is a fantastic way of doing it.
There are many ways now to reach out
Emergency
to
numbers,
people and alert them. Yes, absolutely.
There's been a lot of talk about Sterling Farm, but there's also coyotes over on Midway, the golf course there. One of my neighbors actually saw one sitting in her backyard on Thursday. And I actually personally put flyers in the mailbox on Slice Drive and on Little John. And there probably should be some over off of Woodway Road. But there are coyotes living there, and they've been there for years. I live off of Woodway Golf Course, and I walk in the backyard, and I see their scat all the time. So I know they're living behind us, but I've never seen one. And
If
I
they're
think
not-
this is the first time our neighbor's seen one, she's concerned about it all.
But it sounds like the coyotes are there and they're not posing a problem.
They don't bother,
Yeah.
they haven't bothered me. I've actually, 10, 12 years ago, I saw them walking down our street. I
If
followed
they're-
through it like an idiot.
If they're not posing a
Well, now you know
problem,
better.
if they're not posing a problem, remember they're territorial. That's what you want. They're there, they're not posing a problem, they're territorial, they're gonna keep other coyotes out. And the best thing is just to leave them alone. If they get too close to your yard or your dogs or your family, you haze them and you teach them to keep staying, out of areas where human activity is. I mean, that's the best answer. That really is the only answer. Yes?
Just out of curiosity, how does an agency determine the population in a particular area and how much is increasing by?
How does an agency determine the population in an area and how it's increasing? A lot of estimates based on computer models. You should contact the DEEP to find out more about their details. I don't know enough about how they estimate populations. I know they're very ballpark estimates. And they're really not able to determine if the population is increasing or decreasing. They're just making general estimates. So we don't have a good handle on how many coyotes are in the state or in Stamford, quite frankly. Yes?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I have a question. We have homes in both neighborhoods, right up against the golf course and then Pepperidge here in Field School. And people that have actually seen the coyotes or whatever these are reporting that they look more like the hybrid of the coy wolf. Have you heard anything about that? Because people think they're much larger than the typical scrawny, 30-pound, coyote.
It's interesting. People make determinations based on, the question is to what extent are these coy wolves or what are we looking at? The eastern coyote is much bigger than its western counterpart because it's assumed, and there's good evidence to believe, that they bred with Canadian wolves. So what we have in our eastern coyote is a bigger animal because of this breeding with wolves. In terms of the coy dog, it's really hard to tell from appearance. I mean, there are so many different colorations and body sizes that we're seeing in coyotes, so you really can't tell if they're a coy dog whatsoever. The breeding with dogs is possible, but there are some limitations with that. They're not fertile, the offspring can't breed. So what you're tending to see are these eastern coyotes that are larger animals. And often people see them and think, oh my God, they're huge, and it's because of that breeding with the Canadian wolves that we're
Does that
seeing.
change its habits and approaching, a child sitting outside, an animal coming closer than a coyote? What about, I've never been skittish near coyotes.
Yeah. What we're seeing is coyotes view prey as small animals. They're looking for mice primarily. All the studies that have been done of what coyotes eat are all the same. They're looking for small rodents. They might escalate to a squirrel, a rabbit, or a chicken. They're looking for small, helpless things that won't put up a fight. In terms of children, we're seeing the same situation with habituation. They get used to being around people, they'll approach children. They are not viewing children as a prey item. And across the board, we're not seeing coyotes attack children as a prey item. There are isolated incidences of rabid coyotes, which will attack anything, but that's a teeny percentage. But they're not looking to people. They're primarily approaching children in those circumstances where children are providing food or snacking at a school ground, but they're not looking at children as prey. So we're
They're
not
watching.
They watch all of
Yeah.
us. Yeah, they're kind of like dogs. They watch us. And I've had countless calls as I ran a wildlife hotline for 18 years. People will say, there's a coyote stalking me. And I'll say, well, tell me, what do you mean he's stalking me? What's he doing? Well, he's looking at me funny. What does that mean? It's all perceptual. People decide the animal has ill intent, and so that animal becomes an animal that's stalking them or out to do harm. And the animal might just be looking at them because coyotes and foxes watch us. They watch their environment, they're keenly aware of what goes on, and they're living in close quarters with us. Because they're watching us doesn't mean they're looking at us as a prey item. They're just watching us to see if we're about to do harm to them. So, you have to be careful about our assumptions and perceptions, which may be totally off base and usually are. Yes?
Okay, so just clarification. If I have a dog that's outside on the electric fence all day, if he's a larger dog, I don't need to worry about him because the coyotes will stay away, but if it's a small dog, it shouldn't be out there on like a regular scheduled kind of thing?
What we say is with large dogs during the breeding season, January to March, sometimes coyotes will check out large dogs that are near their den because they're looking to see if that large dog is a threat to their den or potential threat. With small dogs, they may decide a small dog is a prey item at any time of year because that small Bichon may look like a squirrel or a rabbit, and so that small animal may be at risk from an attack by a coyote if you're letting him free roam. And that's why we encourage people not to let small dogs free roam. Yes?
Has there been any instances of rabid?
We've had a few instances, not many, of rabid coyotes. It's interesting because of the coyote encounters here in Connecticut. Most of the encounters, the vast majority, were encounters because people were feeding coyotes and they came up to a person and were like, where's my food? And they nipped the person or, tried to get their attention, like, I'm used to handouts, give me more. In terms of rabies, it's relatively rare. It does occur. A rabid coyote is like any other rabid animal. They will exhibit abnormal behaviors, they'll become neurologic, they will circle, become very aggressive for no reason, they'll fall down, they'll have an impaired limb, and they'll exhibit a behavior that is totally abnormal. With rabies, the good news about rabies is that when an animal is in the clinical stage of rabies, where he's showing signs of rabies, he's within a day or two of death. So once they're showing these abnormal aggression, you should call animal control. But that animal is going to die pretty quickly. But we haven't seen much rabies in coyotes. There's small incidents, but not much. But if you're concerned, if you see a coyote acting abnormally, call animal control. Yes?
We have time for 2 more questions.
Time for 2 more? Who has that?
I
Yes,
have a
Sherry.
question about the trapping, actually. When they do that, do they need to let people, what kind of traps are they setting, and do they need to let people know? Because people are out walking to let your dogs run, and I know other animals get caught in these traps. So how exactly does that work?
They usually set leg-hold traps. Leg-hold traps are non-selective. They do capture non-target animals like cats and dogs. They're extremely harmful. They can do serious injury to cats and dogs and other animals. And this is another reason we oppose the use of leg-hold traps. Even when they're set right outside a coyote den, other animals can get in, even birds of prey.
But do they need to let the public know?
They do not need to let the public know. There is no public. Yeah.
We have to get a permit from the state that DEP that in order to set the trap. they dictate that the trap is right. And what we use licensed trap, they are padded lane traps. So if they go on your arm, it won't work, they will crush you. So it's a padded, padded lane, so a rabbit or something, it's more than that.
The problem with these padded traps, and I was on an interagency committee internationally for trapping standards. The problem with the padded trap is that the animal gets caught in it, that the padding is 1/10 of an inch thick. It's not much padding, but the animal struggles. And they're a wild animal, they're caught, they know to be restrained can mean death because a predator can come along. They struggle, they do a lot of damage to themselves trying to get out of the trap. A big problem is that we have birds of prey and other animals that can get caught in it and do tremendous damage to themselves. So if an animal is caught in a perfectly quiet, comfortable environment and they don't try to get out of the trap, they may not be injured, but it's the struggle to get out that results in a lot of injury. And the non-target animals that get in the trap, for example, a rabbit or another animal, has a more delicate limb which will be harmed. So non-target catches usually result in the animal needing to be euthanized because they are so badly injured. But our issues are when you set a leg hold trap in the open environment, any animal is apt to get in it. And we don't view it as a humane option. We see way too many injuries. The national trap standard is that if the animal doesn't die within 3 minutes or struggling, it's considered humane, but the animals can do a whole lot of damage to themselves within that time period. So we just feel that leg hold traps are not selective enough, and when they're set out in the open environment, you don't know what coyote you're catching or what animal you're catching. And you really, if you're trying to target certain animals' bad behaviors, we feel other tools are much better suited to that, as I went through. Any other questions? Are we good? If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate. Lindsay White-Dasher is our coyote expert, so please don't hesitate to avail yourself of contacting us because we'd love to give you more information. Thank you.